Good afternoon, I'm Alicia Fireherm, and this is TMNtv News. Let's get started with a look at some national news. As we reported last week, the United Auto Workers Union is on strike against Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. On Friday, the strike spread to 38 GM and Stellantis parts distribution centers, but not any of Ford's because progress has been made between Ford and the union on wages and job security provisions. However, according to NPR, Union President Shawn Fain says there are still serious issues to work through, but they want to recognize Ford's intentions to reach a deal. Other offers by the automakers have been dismissed by the union, as they believe the company should have more to offer based on the record profits earned in recent years. Unfortunately for some workers, the strikes have led to temporary layoffs. This is what happened at a GM assembly plant in Kansas City, where 2,000 unionized employees are out of work. Temporary layoffs have been announced at other locations, but on a smaller scale. Friday, President Biden announced a new White House office with a focus on preventing gun control. According to NPR, the office will be headed by Vice President Harris, and the work will be directed by Staff Secretary Stephanie Feldman. Biden hopes that the creation of the office will be a way to elevate his administration's efforts to reduce gun violence. So far, any legislative efforts in Congress have been stalled. Here's more on the issue from Fox News Chicago.
The White House just started a federal office to combat the surging gun violence we're seeing across the country. Vice President Kamala Harris will lead the effort. Research shows the U.S. has seen more than 500 mass shootings just this year. 2020 data from the CDC revealed gun violence was the leading cause of death for children. Harris's responsibilities will consist of making sure the bipartisan safety laws being followed and to find ways to curb gun violence without involving Congress.
There has to be responsibility, and nobody is saying nobody has the right to bear arms.
Data from the Pew Research Center says 58% of adults support tougher gun laws. 26% say they have no problem with the way things are now.
NPR reports that the move by Biden will most likely help him win votes from young people in the 2024 election. Earlier this month, Frank Rubio broke the record for the longest amount of time in space by an American. The previous record was 355 days, which he surpassed on the 11th, and he surpassed the one-year mark last Thursday. Rubio is set to come back to Earth on Wednesday. Here is more information about Rubio's mission, including why he's been in space so long, courtesy of the Tribune News Service.
And liftoff.
A few weeks before NASA astronaut Frank Rubio launched to the International Space Station with 2 cosmonauts on a Russian Soyuz rocket, I spoke with him about the geopolitical tensions that he'd be leaving behind on Earth.
Did you ever have any second thoughts about flying on a Russian Soyuz in the middle of this conflict with Ukraine?
Again, not really, because I trust my crew wholeheartedly. If anything, right, there's a little bit of nerves about the whole big picture of going to space for the first time, spending 6 months up there.
But 6 months quickly turned into a full year after his ride home. The Soyuz spacecraft was struck by a small object in space, puncturing the Soyuz's radiator and spewing coolant into space.
A stream of particles.
Russia's space agency Roscosmos decided the spacecraft was unsafe and a replacement Soyuz would need to be sent to bring the crew home. For Rubio, who was on his first space flight and had just become the first Salvadoran American to go to space, it meant being away from his wife and 4 children for double the time that he'd been preparing for.
If you had known at the time you launched that you were going to be up in space for a full year instead of 6 months, would you have still done it?
Yeah, hey, Kristen, it's good to talk to you again. I think it would have depended on when I would have found out. Obviously, if they had asked me up front before you start training, because you do train for a year or 2 years for your mission, I probably would have declined, and that's only because of family things that were going on this past year. And had I known that I would have had to miss those very important events, I just would have had to say thank you, but no thank you. But once you commit to the mission, once you're part of the training, I would have been committed to the mission.
By the time Rubio returns to Earth next week, he will have been in space for 371 days, longer than any other American in history. 3 spacewalks, conducted dozens of science experiments, but perhaps the most interesting experiment for this Army doctor turned astronaut is the one that Zero Gravity has been conducting on his own body.
The reality is we're not standing, we're not walking, we're not bearing our own weight, and so it'll be anywhere from 2 to 6 months before I essentially say that I feel normal.
And normal is exactly what Rubio's craving, spending time with his family and time outside these walls on Earth.
Up here we kind of have the constant hum of machinery that's keeping us alive, and so I'm looking forward to just being outside and enjoying the peace and quiet.
Late last night, it was announced that screenwriters and studios in Hollywood have reached a tentative deal after 5 months of strikes. In a statement by the Writers Guild of America, the potential deal was described as, quote, exceptional with meaningful gains and protections for writers, end quote. The strike began when writers wanted higher end residuals for work that is rerun on streaming services, as well as the guarantee of a consistent writer's room for television series. The strike will not be completely ended until union members vote on the deal and it is made final, so for now, writers are still not working. According to NPR, they have also been encouraged to join members of the Actors Union who have been on strike since July. Taking a look at the weather, we have another relatively warm week ahead of us, with highs in the upper 80s and low 90s. The warmest day of the week will be Thursday with a high of 92 degrees. The coldest day of the week will be Wednesday with a high of 84. We'll see sunny skies most of the week with some cloudier days on Friday and then Saturday. We'll have a nice 88-degree day for the homecoming parade and game on Saturday. And as always, to stay up to date with this report as it changes, visit kwch.com. When we come back, Reagan Neufeld with sports.
5, 4, 3.
We know you'll love what you see here on our campus in Hayes, America.
With over 200 academic programs, small classroom sizes, and a 96% success rate, we will make sure you get the tools you need to succeed.
We are proud to offer you 120 clubs and student organizations, over 300 different intramural activities, and countless other ways to get involved here on campus.
As the most affordable four-year institution in the entire state, we are excited to offer you the best value in education anywhere. Not to mention our robust scholarship programs to help minimize that stress of paying for college.
We hope you enjoyed Tiger Nation, and we can't wait for you to see yourself here.
I'm Reagan Neufeld, and welcome back to the weekly sports update. It was another busy week for Fort Hays Athletics, and we've got reports on all of the fall sports teams. After a week off from competition last week, the men's and women's cross-country teams traveled to Stillwater, Oklahoma for the Cowboy Jamboree. Both teams finished in the top 10, with the women placing 4th and the men placing 7th. The women were the top Division II team, led by JC Vath, who placed 19th but was first out of all other Division II runners. Grant Bradley was the Tigers' top finisher on the men's side, placing 26th. Both teams will look to continue their successful seasons next week on October 6th when they compete in Emporia's Hornet Harrier Invitational. The football team traveled east on Saturday to take on the Griffins of Missouri Western. Although the Tigers generated almost 100 more yards of offense than the Griffins, 5 turnovers throughout the game ultimately led to a 28-7 loss for Fort Hays. The tone of the game was set early when Missouri Western intercepted a pass on the second play of Fort Hays' first offensive drive, which led to a touchdown soon after. The Griffins' next score came from a blocked punt on the very next Fort Hays series. After halftime, the Griffins scored once in the third quarter and once in the fourth. The Tigers also scored in the fourth quarter on an 8-yard pass from Jack Dawson to Jaden Horace. The loss moves Fort Hays' record to 2 wins and 2 losses. They will look for another win at home this Saturday when they host Lincoln for homecoming. Kickoff is set for 7 p.m. Friday and Saturday mark the second week of MIAA play for the volleyball team. Unfortunately for the Tigers, both games resulted in a loss 3-0. On Friday, the team hosted the Central Oklahoma Broncos, who are ranked 21st in Division II. The Tigers were held under 20 points in all 3 sets, losing 25-19, 25-19, and 25-12. The game on Saturday against Pittsburgh was more evenly matched. The Tigers kept within 3 points the first 2 sets, losing 25-22 and 26-24, but lost the third 25-17. Gracie Rains led the team in kills on the weekend, recording 9 in both games, while Brooke Highland finished with the most digs, recording 15 on Friday and 16 on Saturday. Fort Hays is now 6-7 on the year and will face another tough opponent tomorrow as they play Nebraska Kearney on the road. Both the men's and women's soccer teams went 1-1 last week. The men's team began conference play on Thursday with a win against Newman here in Hays. Colin Hirschberger and Tig Walsh each scored a goal to result in a 2-0 final score. The Tigers did not fare as well on Saturday, however, dropping their game against Southern Nazarene 2-0. They are now 2-5 on the season and will play Ouachita Baptist on Thursday. The women's team had one last non-conference game early last week against Washburn, which they lost 2-1. The Tigers' lone goal in that game was scored by Allison Worley. Worley scored again on Sunday against Emporia, alongside Sullivan Kelly and Montserrat Diaz. Those three goals gave the Tigers a 3-1 victory over the Hornets. The team is now 5-1-2 on the season and will take on Northwest Missouri State here in Hays on Friday. The men's golf team is competing today and tomorrow at the Missouri Southern Fall Invitational. Last week, the team finished 9th in the Northeastern State Men's Classic. Jackson Rader had the best individual performance, placing 26th. Also competing last week was the women's tennis team. They began competition on Wednesday, beating Hastings College 6-1. 5 Tigers won their singles matches, and all 3 doubles teams earned victories as well. Several players then competed in the ITA Fall Central Regional over the weekend. Irina Alfonso and Inez Latore each picked up wins there. Up next for the Tigers is a match against Sterling College tomorrow. And that is all the time we have for today. Until next week, you can stay up to date with Fort Hays Athletics by checking tigermedianet.com as well as our social media pages.
When you transfer to Fort Hays State University, you discover unmatched affordability, convenience, and powerfully supportive faculty and staff, all with a determination that matches yours. Complete your degree and leap forward in your life and career with Fort Hays State University Online. The best value in education anywhere.
Tiger Media Network is the student convergent media lab hub for Fort Hays State. We live broadcast all of Fort Hays' home athletic events.
Our program is a hands-on program where we give kids ample opportunity to do anything from writing stories to audio and video projects to sports productions to newscast. The sky's the limit. We tell the students whatever they can think of or dream of, we'll find a way to try to pull it off to give them that experience.
I am a junior at Fort Hays State University and I'm a photography major. So I've done cameras, I've done tech directing, video board, a little bit of directing. I really enjoy being able to have an eye for that. It's something I really enjoyed learning about through my 3 years here with photography. To me, photography and even just video and broadcasting kind of go hand in hand.
The future is with the kids, and the new tech gear that we have fits great into our educational model of a great learning environment for the students.
I really like the TriCaster. I like how you can make it as simple as you want, or you can go as complex as you need it to be. You know, you can pretty much do whatever you want with it.
It's a good experience. It teaches you how to work as a team, how to kind of lead things on your own.
Well, we wanted something when it came to giving our students opportunity that was going to be easy to use and applicable in a lot of different scenarios. And that's what we felt like with TriCaster and New Tech really offer.
You get a really good experience and it's something you could easily get into.
When we pull off a great production or they provide a great replay angle for a referee in a crucial instant, that makes you proud.
Once you start working with the TriCaster, you can really understand exactly what's going on behind the scenes.
And now it's my favorite thing to do.
This week is homecoming week, so there's a lot going on. Starting off this morning, homecoming candidates Nate Egan and Jess Kirchhoff were in the quad handing out buttons.
So we got all these cute little buttons. I made some buttons. Our ship name or together name or whatever is Nest. So we have some Vote Nest buttons. We have some Vote Nate and Jess for homecoming. We got all kinds of designs. They're on our Instagram. Check it out. Vote_Nate_Jess.
Homecoming candidates have been campaigning in several ways, including creating goodie bags for the cross-country team and handing out donuts. Voting for King and Queen opens on TigerLink on Wednesday at 9 a.m. All the candidates will be at the DIY Game Day Buttons event on the quad Thursday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So stop by and get to know your HOCO candidates. Also on Thursday is the annual bonfire that will take place at the Robbins Center at 7:30 p.m. The homecoming parade will be at 11 a.m. on Saturday on the bricks in downtown Hays, and the FHSU football team will take on Lincoln at 7 p.m. at Lewis Field Stadium. For coverage of these events, visit TigerMediaNet.com as well as our social media pages. Earlier this month, graduate art students had the opportunity to show their work in an exhibition in the Moss Thorns Gallery on campus. This exhibit featured the work of several graduate students, including P.J. Stauffer. Stauffer graduated last year from Fort Hays with his undergraduate degree. His piece, Memory, is his first piece displayed as a graduate student. Here's what Stauffer had to say.
Actually, this has been like a year and a half in the making. I actually started on this so long ago, back when I lived at a previous house. And I've gotten to a point where I was just like, oh my gosh, I just kind of need to stop looking at it. I need to get it out of here. And now that I have it on display, I'm like, you know what, this is actually good because it's finished, even though it looks like, I mean, it's kind of part of it, but it is unfinished. I don't have like all the memory of being back there. I don't remember exactly what it all looks like. And most of this I was doing sitting in my room because it's actually kind of the angle of me from my bed. But yeah, so it's actually kind of nice to like put it on display now and be like, okay, I'm finished.
To see even more events from the exhibit, visit TigerMediaNet.com. Health and Wellness Services hosted a Love Your Selfie event on the quad on Thursday. This event allows students the chance to take Polaroid pictures while also learning about the services Health and Wellness has to offer. Breathe Coffee House was also on the quad during this time for Couch on the Quad, where they serve coffee and encourage conversation. If you've ever wondered if Hays has been featured in any movies or documentaries, our reporter Eleanor Couchman has you covered. She took a look into two different pieces of media, a Swiss documentary and the movie Paper Moon, which celebrated its 50th anniversary this summer.
Hayes is either too big to be a town or too small to be a city. At Fort Hays State University, metropolitan students lack a sprawling atmosphere and rural students struggle to adjust to the influx. Regardless of modern accommodations, though, the media knows Hayes as a quintessential stop in isolated America. In 1976, Radio Télévision Suisse profiled Hayes for the Swiss documentary A Quiet America in commemoration for the United States' bicentennial. Directors Marc Schindler and Jean-Jacques Lagrange portrayed rural American life for a European audience, which they believed only knew portrayals of major cities. It's a slow-paced documentary about a slow-paced town, and it went over well enough for Schindler to revisit Hayes in 2015.
Hayes changed for the best. You have new equipment, to a new hospital, you have that sort of thing. But they didn't change much.
2 years later, this old film was immortalized online, courtesy of the Hayes Arts Council. It was the first time most Hayes locals were ever able to see the film, and for Council Executive Brenda Mader, localizing this film was almost like opening a time capsule.
They actually still had the raw copy of it, the raw interview without the French voiceovers. So the completed film, as they showed it, just without any of the French translation and or documentary narrative dropped in.
Morning farm price trends, soybeans, corn, and wheat all higher.
Nearly half a century has passed, and all but 3 of the starring locals have either left or died. Those final quiet Americans are the ubiquitous sculptor Pete Felton, retired radio host Mike Cooper, and former newscaster Errol Warts.
I came at Hayes in 1967, and I worked at KAYS Radio and Television until 1978.
High pressure comes moving in, and it'll be in the north central sections of Texas by this time tomorrow.
Originally from Ohio, Warts' life hasn't changed very much. After leaving KAYS, he got his bachelor's and master's in communication at FHSU to become a realtor. Now in his 80s, Warts is still working the same job, giving him a front row seat to the ways Hayes has changed.
Actually, if you want to talk about when I first came here, there wasn't anything north of Interstate 70.
Ironically, A Quiet America was not the first time Hayes locals encountered a major production company.
Let's see, now we can veer down to Lucas, and we'll veer over to Wilson, veer off to Lorraine and Bushton.
And we could veer out to Hoisington.
The 1973 comedy blockbuster Paper Moon sent shockwaves when the crew opted to film in northwest Kansas instead of its original setting in Alabama. The Hayes Arts Council recently commemorated an anniversary display, and many locals reminisced on people they knew with starring roles in the film.
Harriet Ketchum, who had been a very, very large figure on campus in the communication department, particularly through the theater program. She had a speaking role in there. Ralph Coder, who is a local citizen, and I think he had some connection to campus.
At the time, though, filming was controversial. For many locals, Hollywood was too rambunctious for such a quiet town.
I was working at the station, and I'm trying to think who the person was had not paid their rent on the property they were renting, and I went out to interview them, and I think they were getting served with papers by the sheriff's department, and the production company didn't want me around anymore, so that ended my following of Paper Moon.
Today, Hayes is a less quiet place. Its population has grown 37%, and its Volga German roots have all but vanished.
A lot of other communities are not doing as much at Oktoberfest, the traditional German people, because most of them have passed away.
My Großvater und Großmutter kamen auf die Welt in Katharienstadt.
Regardless of how it continues to change, though, Hayes will always have quite a film repertoire to its name.
Someone in some point of time thought that this was special. And that goes a long way in sort of making you feel good about your place in the world and in your community.
Reporting for Tiger Media Network, this is Eleanor Couchman.
Thank you all so much for joining us. As always, to stay up to date with local, state, and national news, visit TigerMediaNet.com as well as our social media pages. This has been Alicia Fireherm with TMNtv News.